What's up everybody, Soul here with another sort of Convallaria video, and today we will be talking about tactics and how I believe they can help you in the game, kind of give you a glimpse of what they can do, give an explanation as to how they can benefit you and how I've utilized them, and rate them based on that with a tier list. And so I want you to bear all this in mind. This will be my opinion. This is not fact. This is just simply what I think, and I'm sharing that with you to hopefully better your gameplay and to help you better manage your resources and know what to pursue or go after, or to possibly try something different that maybe you hadn't before. With that all said, let's get right into it and have a look at our tactics here. Now, as we all know, each tactic is under each one of these different talent branches and can be leveled up and maxed. They start at very low levels and you only have access to 1 or 2 or 3 or so on at the start of the game, and over time you grow and you get access to the stronger versions and more of them. And so with that all said, let's look at each one of them and kind of rate and talk about them. First, we're going to talk about Thunderstruck. This deals piercing damage equal to 4,000 plus 30% of the target's HP. The effect is halved in arena mode, and so it only has a 150 tactics cost and has a 4-turn cooldown. This is phenomenal in that we can quickly target those units, and maybe they're barely alive, maybe they are a nuisance, or we can even use this to trigger different terrain effects like the explosive barrels. This could be pretty phenomenal for that reason, and especially early on when you first start the game, you're probably going to really enjoy this tactic because it can just outright delete opponents that stand in your way and help you clear levels faster. This is a really fun and phenomenal tactic for that reason. However, I have found that it really falls off at the end game, and so it's very strong early on, gets you quite a way through the game, and then its uses become much smaller once you're in game and you're in in-game content like Tower Conquest and so on and so forth. And so for me, this tactic is ranked a tier 1. Next, let's have a look at Summon Explosive Barrel. And so this summons a mini explosive barrel on the target tile, dealing half the damage of the regular explosive barrel. Only one can exist at a time. It can be used up to 5 times per battle. Now this is this at its final form. It doesn't specify how much damage it does exactly, and I haven't tested that, but I have enjoyed this tactic and used it a decent amount, but not enough to want to level it all the way to max. What's really fun about this tactic is not only do you get the benefit of an object that deals damage to your opponents and creates fire terrain, but you also can use it as an obstacle to deter your opponents or zone them out of the way. And so there's pretty good utility there. It has a relatively low cost of 175, and then it has a 1-turn cooldown. But as it said, it can only have 1 on the field at a time, and so you have to make sure you utilize that before you're able to cast it again. With that all said and in mind, this being a fantastic and great tactic, I don't think it's overly useful, and its uses can tend to be a little bit niche. With that all said, I would rank this a tier 2 tactic. Next up is Hymn of Life. All allies within 3 tiles recover 6,000 HP, and the effect of course is halved in arena mode, and gain regeneration 3 for 2 turns. And so that regeneration 3 allows them to have 30% HP back at the end of the turn. Before the healing, it dispels 3 debuffs from the targets. So really good for that quick heal, and then of course that regen effect afterwards. It's like a get me out of jail card and so on and so forth. This is an advanced tactic. You can have 3 tactics on at a time: a common, an intermediate, and an advanced. Out of the advanced tactics, I have a hard time wanting to run and use this in comparison to some of the others and their utility and how useful they can be. And so this tactic, while it's great for giving you that heal and that sustain, and I have used it, I have a hard time justifying bringing it over other tactics that are more useful that I will discuss later. And so for that reason, I would rank this as a tier 1 tactic. Next, under the Seeker's Path, let's have a look at March Command. This grants March Command that lasts for 2 turns to all allies in battle. This effect increases their movement by 3 tiles, and affected units can move another 3 tiles after attacking. So this has a 200 tactics cost on a 4-turn cooldown. This is phenomenal for those stages where you have to get somewhere far and quickly. Well, not so much quickly, but far. And you want to make sure that they get ahead of opponent, catch them before they escape, whatever that may be. Or maybe you just want to close the gap and get to, say, your boss or your final target quickly within that single turn or the next turn. This has that use and is good for that reason, and I have used it quite a bit. I've maxed it out, as you can see, so it's pretty great. Now, do I prefer it over the other tactics? Not always. I find that I change my intermediate tactics somewhat often, and so I would rate this as a decent tactic overall that has a pretty niche use. And so for that reason, I would rank it as a tier 0.5. Up next is Raid Order. It grants the target raid order. The effect is the target gains 100% crit bonus and 20% crit damage when attacking an enemy from the side or behind. All effects last for 2 turns. This is a 90 tactics cost and a 2-turn cooldown. It's very, very cheap. This is a common deal, common tactic. However, I never really took a liking to this. I find that I crit so often, or that if I need to crit, I've already got it built into the kit, and so I don't utilize a tactic that forces the crit, and I'm only getting a 20% boost to their crit damage. It's not enough to warrant running this tactic over another tactic. And so for me, this is one that does not have a lot of utility, and I don't really like it. And so for that reason, I would rank this as a tier 4 tactic. Up next, of course, is Divine Archer. And so this is a tactic that summons 1 advanced recruited archer on the target tile. Only 1 can exist at a time and can be used 3 times per battle. And so this is going to be a unit that fights alongside of you. Now, as an advanced recruited archer, they get the ability to use Gorilla, Power Shot, and Sky Rendering Arrow. At its base form, it has Rookie Recruited Archer, which only has Gorilla and Foot Sniping, which is great for eliciting mobility and some other utility there. And then, of course, the intermediate has Gorilla and Powerful Shot as its abilities. The problem I have with this is you're getting an extra unit that fights with you and helps you in battle and does damage, and is an archer type. So the issue I have is that you don't have control over this unit. This unit is not yours to decide how to move and what abilities to use. It's going to act upon its own and do what it wants. And the AI can be a little questionable at times. That's all I'm going to say. It's a little questionable. And so to run this as an advanced tactic over the other options that you have doesn't seem to make sense to me. And so for me, this is a easy tier 5 tactic. Now looking at Radiance, let's have a look at their tactics. First up, you have Pursuit Order, and so this grants Pursuit Order. The effect allows them to act again after attacking and grants them Attack Up 4, lasting for 1 turn. Attack Up 4 is that 40% boost to damage. That's pretty nice, and so this is a pretty powerful tactic. It's an intermediate tactic. I have used this a decent amount, which is why I have it maxed out. However, I don't think that it is what I would lean on nowadays. I find that I use this less and less, and that its uses are fairly niche. There's a 3-turn cooldown and a 200% tactics cost, and as an intermediate tactic, instead of acting again and getting an attack boost, which I get from other sources, I find that I don't really care to have this tactic. And so I initially thought it was great and thought I was doing something great, but it quickly fell off once I got to the end game and started utilizing certain characters together in certain combinations, when I really realized the team synergies that I could create. And so this tactic really fell off quickly, and now I've gotten to the point where I just don't ever use it. And I can't really advise you to use it unless you're lacking that Inanna, or you're lacking someone that gives you that great attack boost. But even then, you're forsaking a really, really good tactic in its place. And so this tactic, in my opinion, has no place in our summoner's role, if you will, anymore, or tactician's role anymore, if you will. And so for me, this tactic has fallen off and will be placed as a tier 4 tactic. Up next is guarding dummy deployment. And so this summons an advanced training dummy with the skill guard on the target tile. It decreases AoE damage by 100% and cannot attack or move, and can be used 2 times per battle. And so it just reduces that damage, that AoE damage, pretty phenomenal there. And then withstands physical attacks for all allies within 2 tiles radius, increasing defense by 20% when activated. This is a fairly niche one. It's a common tactic, and it has 140 cost of 4 turn cooldown. This is not a bad tactic, honestly, and it might be somewhat underrated by most people, and it might not be used that often. The issue is that it's very, very defensive, and we don't have a lot of utility in defensive tactics in this game right now, because everything's kind of a damage calc or a damage race. And so this tactic sadly doesn't have a lot of utility in the current format of the game and with the current content of the game. And so for me, sadly, this tactic goes down as a tier 3 tactic. Next is going to be Invincible Hero. It grants the target Invincible and Enhanced Strike Back 3 in its final form, which cannot be dispelled or immunized, and lasts until the start of the target's turn. And so as you can see, invincibility is a character is immune to all damage, no matter what the source. This effect cannot be immunized or dispelled. And then of course Strike Back against all attacks within 5 tiles. It deals physical damage equal to 100% physical attack plus magic attack. This effect cannot be immunized or dispelled and lasts until the start of the next action. And so this is a pretty interesting ability there with that Strike Back and so on and so forth. I really want it to be cool and to work. However, I've not been able to find a situation or a use where it just really pops off and does something amazing to me. It's nice that you're able to use it and get a really strong strike back in one turn. Maybe we'll see something kind of interesting happen with Layla on this one. I don't know. I haven't really had a chance to test it, but even then, that's still pretty niche, and we're talking about an advanced tactic, and you're giving up other advanced tactics that can be better for this. This has a 6-turn cooldown too, which is pretty massive, if I'm being honest with you, with a 325 tactics cost. And so for me, sadly, this tactic doesn't pop off and comes in at a tier 4. Up next in the Radiance talents is Ragnarok. This is an advanced tactic. It deals piercing damage equal to 4,000 plus 30% of their max HP to all enemies within a 4-tile radius. And then of course this is halved in arena mode, and it inflicts stun on the central target for 1 turn. For me, this is a phenomenal tactic. Whereas Thunderstruck only hits 1 target, this does the same but hits many targets and then has that piercing damage. Thunderstruck is phenomenal in that it does that piercing damage just the same as this, but to hit so many more is just so great. It only has a 1-turn cooldown, but it comes in at a big cost of 450 tactics points. And so this is a big one that you're normally going to throw and you're going to be recovering from just in cost alone, and you won't be able to utilize the next turn very often, or at least I can't think of it happening too often. With that all said and done, I've utilized this tactic more than probably any other advanced tactic, and this is a phenomenal thing. It triggers terrain effects, it triggers those explosive barrels, it can get rid of obstacles and objects, and of course hit your enemies, and with that wonderful piercing damage. Great, great, great tactic. Can't say enough good about it. With that all said, this comes in at a tier 0. Next is Manuever Command. This teleports a target to any location within 8 tiles around the character, restoring 25% HP upon doing so. This has 120 tactics cost and has a 3-turn cooldown, which is fairly cheap. The cooldown feels like it's a little bit long, if I'm being honest with you. I'd like it to be a little bit less, However, I still use this quite a bit. This tactic is great for like getting yourself out of trouble if you happen to have made a mistake and you need to move somebody really quickly, or to quickly engage and get someone in to the back line to hit someone squishy or to do something good. And to those hard to reach characters, this tactic is pretty phenomenal, especially when you're dealing with pesky terrain issues. And so I've used this quite a bit, and happily I've even used this tactic just to heal people and to help them survive better. It's a 25% heal, boom, period, dot, point, click, and then you're getting to move them to a better position. So there's a lot of versatility in this tactic, and I like it a lot. And so for that reason, I would rank this tactic a 0.5. Last in this path is the Requiem tactic, and so this inflicts sleep on all enemies within 2 tiles around the target, lasting for 2 turns. The duration, of course, is halved in Arena, and so this has a 220 tactics cost with a 4-turn cooldown. I've used this. I've tried to use it quite a bit to make it work. I've not really found a tremendous amount of utility in this. It is nice for those maps where you have a ton of enemies, or maybe you're getting pressed and there are a bunch of them on your units and you're potentially going to lose someone, and then you'll pop this and you're able to put multiple units to sleep and get some more survivability and be able to reorganize, you name it. However, I'm struggle to use this effectively, and it's harder to find good meaningful uses for it. And a good tactic, in my opinion, especially taking that intermediate slot, you want something that's easy to use, that's going to be hard not to use, not the opposite. And so Requiem sadly doesn't do a lot for me, and for that reason I honestly would rank it as a tier 5 tactic. I said moving into Radiance. I was talking about Destroyer's Path last time. It's Delirium, sorry guys. Now we're looking over at the Watcher's Path, and so let's have a look at it. We're looking at Urgent Order first, and so this grants a target Urgent Order. It increases the target's speed by 300 and recovering 2 energy, lasting for 1 turn. It only costs 80 tactical points to use and has a 1-turn cooldown. This tactic was my favorite tactic in the game for the longest time. I used it constantly. I was addicted to it. It's really hard to pass up on something that raises your unit's speed, let alone gives them energy. And so to get that 2 energy and to get that speed up is massive. And so I was using it constantly just to give my units extra energy, to get them faster, to get them hit things harder, to clear the content faster. Really, really hard to turn your nose up at a tactic as powerful and as useful as this. It's common, it's cheap, with a low cooldown, and has a huge benefit of increasing that speed and energy. I can say it over and over again 100 times just because of how great it is. This is, in my opinion, a tier 0 tactic. Next is Flag of Convallaria. This summons a flag on the target tile. The effect is all allies within 5 tiles around the character gain a 20% bonus to attack and defense. At the start of the turn, it restores 1 energy and reduces all skill cooldowns by 1 turn for them. Fantastic. This has a 350 tactical cost with a 3-turn cooldown, and of course it's an advanced tactic. This is an object on the field. This has a lot of utility and versatility for that reason. If you really want your buff your team and then for them to utilize it for what it obviously gives off the flag itself, yes, throw it down, watch your team roll with more energy, doing more damage, being more resilient, and of course having more cooldowns. Phenomenal. But moreover, if, let's just say, you need to create an obstacle where an enemy can't reach you for a turn, or maybe you're trying to, just create something for terrain advantage, you name it, to zone an enemy. It works. This honestly takes a slot. It could be your boss summoning units, and maybe you don't want them to summon a unit right next to them because you want somebody to be able to fill that slot, or maybe you want them to be deployed somewhere different, you name it. This is an object on the field that only lasts as long as it's placed and can be utilized effectively for that reason too. And then of course the benefits of the flag while it's up are pretty massive and hard to argue against. And so for that reason, I would say this tactic is phenomenal and amazing with a fairly high cost, sadly, but makes sense. I would rank it as a tier 0.5. Next is the intermediate tactic Warhorn. This inflicts Warhorn on all enemies within 2 tiles of the target. It increases their damage taken by 80% and inflicts focus target and no reaction skills on the central target for 1 turn. Of course, focus target reduces defense by a further 20%, and then of course that no reaction means they're not going to be able to use their reaction skills. This has a 275 tactical cost with a 3-turn cooldown. Warhorn is a phenomenal tactic. This is really great for when you want to clear something, kill it fast, or maybe something's just resilient, whatever it might be. Tower of Conquest, you're probably going to use it pretty often, especially on the stronger bosses and units. You pop this, you go in, suddenly something that was mighty and indefensible, or mighty and defensive, is just squishy and takes all of the damage and just folds. It's really, really good. Really, really powerful, and I can't stress how useful this tactic is, and I think everybody and anyone would agree. So for that reason, I would honestly rank Warhorn a tier 0 tactic. With that all said, we have now gone over all of the tactics. I hope that you have found this to be somewhat informative and useful. These tactics, of course, all are unlocked under your different paths, under your talents tree. This is where you're going to invest and grow them. And these star particles, you don't necessarily have an endless amount of them. You're not going to be able to just drop tons and tons of them. And so you want to make sure that you're investing wisely where you want to. Because not only are they going to be used for these tactics, they're also used for these skills, these traits. You know, you want to increase their physical attack and so on and so forth. I'll have another video where I talk about that. Regardless, you don't want to just drop these invaluable resources into these tactics without really understanding, knowing what to do. At the end of the day, you need to go with what you like the best. But for those that aren't sure, or maybe are too afraid to invest because they're not sure what it's going to do later on, hopefully this guide helps you. Bear in mind, this is my opinion. This is not fact. And me making a tier list out of it is simply a reflection of my opinion on these tactics. If you disagree with it, please drop down in the comments. Let me know. Let's talk about it. Just be respectful when you do it, please. With that all said, thank you so much for watching. A huge shout out to my Patreon members. Thank you so much for all your support. You make it all possible for me to make this content, to make the pools for the characters, and so on and so forth. If you feel inclined to support and help the channel out yourself, drop down the link. You'll see it down below in the description. And then, yeah, if you want to join our Discord, there's a link down there as well. Please feel free to jump in and to join us so that we can talk about these various things on our Discord channel. An extra huge shout out to Mr. Mustachio for this idea to make this video. It was his suggestion, so huge thank you for that. Thank you so much for watching. Take it easy, and until next time, bye.